Evolutionary at War podcast from your way, episode 440, compound episode. Stevesmi here, the Rickster. What's up going, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Steve? What's up, guys? How's everybody doing out there?
All right, so we're gonna start. I came up with the idea to kind of start up a myth series. So we're gonna kind of talk about the myths. These are myths that we hear, maybe on social media, maybe on the forums, maybe in the locker room at the gym, maybe amongst friends. A lot of myths become mainstream, and we have to kind of, just research these myths, and we can actually find out pretty quickly that these myths are, that's what they are. They're just myths. And a lot of times, people just say they blah, 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 blah. They say these myths over and over, and they parrot these myths over and over. And it's like they become true from a placebo standpoint. So the first one I'm going to bring up is Deca ruins your dick. And this is I consider this a myth. I mean, I've run Deca 3 times. I've never had an issue on cycle, off cycle. Guys, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they ran lots of Deca. You talk to anybody in your gym who's in their 60s, okay? These guys who've been lifting weights for many, many years, and their favorite steroid is Deca. Now, why is Deca their favorite steroid? Well, it's because you don't have to run more than 2 cc's a week to have a lot of it in your system. That's 200 milligrams per cc, right? That's 400 milligrams a week. You don't got to worry about estrogenic side effects. You don't have to worry about androgenic side effects. So if you talk to these guys, I'm always amazed. They'll say that's good shit. Deca's good shit. But if you talk to some of the younger guys, they're like, oh, I don't want to mess with Deca. Deca will screw up my dick. So I consider that a myth. Like, I haven't seen ironclad evidence that if you run Deca, your dick's gonna fall off. I've not seen any evidence that if you run Deca, your libido is gonna crash and it's not gonna come back. I've not seen evidence that running Deca causes your fertility to die off. So I just don't see it. Now, when you take a nandrolone, which decadurabolin is a nandrolone, it gets in your system. It causes an imbalance of dihydronanolone and dihydrotestosterone. So DHT versus DHN. So I can be on board with, yes, it causes that imbalance, which can affect maybe your erections, maybe your libido, stuff like that. But that can easily be counteracted by just running a DHT derivative. And this is an idea that I came up with, I don't know, like 10, 12 years ago, based on my own experiences using it. And based on what I've seen, in over the years with guys and blood work and all that stuff. So just run some Proviron, 25 milligrams of Proviron a day with it. You're not going to have any issues. There's nothing. This is why it's a myth. There is nothing in nandrolone that would specifically attack your erections or your libido. There's nothing in it. All nandrolone is testosterone without an atom, okay? With an atom missing. That makes it a fifth as much estrogenic and way less androgenic than testosterone. Whether it says it on paper or not, that is the truth. So for anyone to think that nandrolone, decadurabolin, has more side effects than testosterone, it just doesn't make any sense. So I mean, if you're gonna sit here and say, yeah, testosterone is safe to use, and then say on the other hand, oh, Deca is dangerous, Deca is risky, Deca will ruin your dick and all this stuff. There's no scientific evidence of that. It's one of these things that have been parroted so much on forums. There's probably some guy that started it back in like the late 90s where they ran it and they had, problems on cycle, and they had maybe their girlfriend broke up with them and they were depressed, and, they had other issues going on. They were probably on crack or something. I don't know. They were probably taking antidepressants, and they lost their libido, and they just happened to be on Deca. So they're like, well, Deca ruins libido. And then from there, guys kept parroting it over and over. But there isn't any reason for people to be scared of Deca. Like, oh my God, if I run Deca, my dick's gonna fall. I just consider that a myth. Rick, I mean, you take the devil's advocate right on this. What do you think about this?
I think you're wrong, Steve. Deca, it became a thing because it is a thing, just like Trenkov became a thing because it is a thing. How does Deca kill your dick? Couple of theories on it. One is it produces a milder DHT, 19-OR DHT that competes with your own DHT. And we know from guys taking Proscar and finasteride and drugs like that, that if you lower DHT too much, or if you block it out of the receptors in this case, you're gonna have a problem getting hard. I mean, it's levels of DHT before a male turns 17 that determine the size of your penis. The more DHT in your system before 17, the larger your penis becomes, grows as your teenager. Lower levels of DHT, smaller penis. There are other factors at play, but DHT has been identified as a main one, and it helps. There's a synergistic effect with Deca and testosterone. Deca has been known to prevent hair loss from testosterone because of the same thing. It produces a milder DHT derivative, 19-OR DHT, that competes with your natural testosterone DHT for receptors in the hair follicle and the prostate on your penis. That's one set of thinking. And I think that's one of the reasons why Proviron is such a good alternative, because Proviron will actually has higher affinity for those receptors, and Proviron will get to these receptors at a faster rate than DHT itself or nandrolone. I like to tell guys to just use twice as much testosterone so that you're producing larger amounts of DHT and testosterone. The other one is also that nandrolone does attach to progesterone receptors. And depending how prone you are to progesterone side effects, nandrolone will attach to progesterone receptors unchanged. Not only unchanged, but nandrolone will also aromatize into an estrogen compound at about 1/5 of the rate of testosterone, right? So whatever your rate of aromatization of testosterone is, divided by 5, and that's about the rate that nandrolone will aromatize in. So Decadick is a thing. I've been reading about Decadick on the forums for going on 20 years because it is a thing. It has become a thing. Nandrolone is a hormone that is actually naturally occurring in our body. We discussed it a few podcasts ago. It's naturally occurring in our body. Humans make the most nandrolone when a female is pregnant, is when she has the highest amount of nandrolone production in a human body. It's a good hormone for bodybuilding purposes for men, but you have, again, the additional aspect of it attaching to progesterone receptors for those who are prone, and also creating a weaker DHT that will compete against your own DHT. So that's my take on it. It has been a thing. Many guys have complained about it. Many guys have been really scared by it. I've experienced a little bit of it here and there. And I'll tell you a quick story. I had some vials at one point that were shipped to me without any stickers on them. They just had a little sticker at the bottom, a little number sticker at the bottom, and they didn't have any wrapping stickers. And my guy would send me a message letting me know which vial was what. Well, he made a mistake, and he told me that the bottle that had the testosterone had the Deca in it. He mixed up the numbers at the time of writing the message, and I was drawing out of a vial thinking it was testosterone. That was the Deca. Then I was drawing out of another vial thinking that was Deca. No, that was a testosterone. And I started to get issues with my dick, like not great issues, dude. It was like shooting pool with a rope. I mean, it was bad. So I'm like, all right, there's something wrong here. I contact my source, contact my guy. I said, could there be a chance you fucking sent me something different? You put the sticker on the wrong shit. What's up? And then we go through messages, we go through stuff, and he goes, "Oh man, I fucked up. I'm sorry when I wrote you the message. I told you testosterone for Deca for testosterone. So I was taking, it was a Deca 300, and it was a 200 mg testosterone mix. So I was actually taking like 600 milligrams of Deca, and was only taking less than, just, I was doing about 3/4 of a cc of the test, thinking it was nandrolone, thinking I was doing just a couple hundred of nandrolone. So I've experienced it. Many guys have. That's why the term is coined. And I disagree. But then again, Steve, I mean, we all know that the amount of receptors that we have, all genetics, really play a big role on just how bad things get. And so some guys could slam Deca and maybe never have an issue with it. Some guys can do a little bit and have some problems. So it just kind of goes with the territory.
All right. So the next one we're gonna, this is yours. It has to do with 4-week oral cycles. That's the rumor I heard.
Yeah. So we push this on the podcast ourselves a lot, you and I, Steve, because we come from the angle of just telling guys to be safe. Be as safe as you possibly can. You can get there if you give yourself enough time. This is a marathon, not a race. You'll get there. Just stay consistent, stay with it, stay on the flow, and you'll get there. So we don't tell guys to do crazy cycles, to do high doses. And really 4 to 6 weeks for what orals are and for what orals can do for you, for a healthy guy, for a healthy person, I still believe is about what you want to do. But let me tell you guys out there, there's some studies, serious studies, clinical studies, where patients have been given Anavar 20 to 40 to 60 mgs for as long as 12 weeks. And then after the study, those same patients were given the option to continue on the Anavar for an additional 12 weeks at 20 milligrams. That doesn't sound like a lot, but some of these folks that had a legitimate medical reason for needing Anavar to prevent muscle wasting or some other issues, they were doing 24 weeks of Anavar on these studies. Same thing with Anadrol. There's been studies on Anadrol, guys being on Anadrol for almost a year. Now, these are people that have other diseases, AIDS, wasting diseases, problems with hormones, even burn victims. So yes, the scientific literature is out there. Not only that, I've said it on the podcast, competitors going up to shows will do as much as 100 milligrams of orals for 8 weeks. Got one guy on our Facebook steroid forum now who talked about his pre-show stack, and he's on 100 milligrams of about 3 combined orals, like 8 weeks before the show. So he still had a couple weeks to go. He was probably on orals for like 10 weeks, 12 weeks. So this is a myth that we've kept pushing forward. And the way I got that is because really we used to only do orals for about 4 to 6 weeks as a kickstart to let some of the esters build up. And then you'd get off the orals. It just wasn't a real need to continue to do it. So it kind of stuck. And again, we're talking about real healthy individuals. When you're talking about someone has a wasting disease, full-blown AIDS and maybe some other problems, you're not, if you're a doctor, you're giving this person the steroid that is helping them have some strength, to carry their groceries at the store, right? It's giving them some kind of benefit, some kind of immediate benefit in their lifestyle. And all you're looking at is maybe some labs where the liver profiles are not great, where cholesterol profiles are not great. But this person has full-blown AIDS. You might not be worried about 20, 30 years down the line, right? You might be worried about just helping this guy keep some muscle mass on their frame, so keep some strength so that they could just do regular people things. Like I said, like going food shopping, carrying all the bags, one trip, boom, right? So the patients in these long-term studies obviously had some immediate need for the steroid in their lifestyle. But when we're talking about healthy individuals, where you're just enhancing what you already have that's working well, 4 to 6 weeks is about all you need. Still think that. Don't need to go much further than that. But the clinical data and the practice is out there of guys doing way longer. Got to pump it. My product. This is how we sponsor the show, how we keep the lights on, guys. www.n2guard.com. That is my liver support product that I make for every single one of you guys out there that uses anabolics, that uses steroids. So please keep it going, man. That's it, buddy.
So next one we're going to talk into is trenbolone and gynecomastia. So this is another myth that I hear, and that people think that trenbolone can cause gynecomastia because trenbolone, it metabolizes in the body into prolactin, and rising prolactin can cause gynecomastia. And here's what I've noticed over the years. I've known a handful of people on the forum who have ran trenbolone and had any type of breast issue going on. And in those situations, they were abusing the trenbolone like for a year straight. There was one guy who ran it like for 3 months and had an issue. But here's the key. They didn't have gynecomastia from the trenbolone. They had lactating nipples. So they would notice like brown liquid coming out of nipples when they squeeze their nipples. So is that gynecomastia? It's not gynecomastia. That's lactating nipples. That has nothing to do with gynecomastia. So when people were in trenbolone, like, oh my God, I get gynecomastia from trenbolone, I always ask them, are you running testosterone with it? They're like, yeah, I'm running testosterone with it. I'm like, okay, well, that's your culprit. It's the testosterone that's causing the gynecomastia. It's not the trenbolone, because trenbolone won't cause gynecomastia. Trenbolone will cause lactating nipples. It's not the same thing. So it's two different things. So Rick, counteract that myth. True or false?
Well, as with all of these things, your genetic makeup will have a lot to do with it. The amount of receptors you have, the concentration, all of that. But trenbolone has been known to cause issues with prolactin, just like Superdrol has. So, well, Superdrol, a lot of guys in the 2000s had some lactating nipples from Superdrol, from doing Amdrol, Superdrol, all of the different clones of this hormone. So would you say it's right, Steve? I don't know if I've ever known of anyone really having full-blown gynecomastia. And oh man, there's so many people throughout the years. I'm trying to remember. Somebody had like full-blown gynecomastia, like really hard, large glands from trenbolone. But I have seen a lot of gynecomastia symptoms of like my nipples are a little sore, kind of itchy, got the lactating nipple going left or the right side. Usually one nipple.
But were they running trenbolone by itself, or running tests with it?
Oh, these are guys stacking stuff together. I'm sure.
Yeah,
I've seen.
That's my point. Like,
yeah.
Can you show me someone who ran trenbolone by itself, or ran trenbolone with real Anavar, or ran trenbolone with a mild, and something that doesn't aromatize, who had gynecomastia from trenbolone, and it just doesn't happen.
When we started brewing the trenbolone out of the Phenoplex H pellets, there were a lot of guys that ran trenbolone standalone, because when we started extracting it from pellets, I mean, we didn't know that to really get the most out of trenbolone, you got to stack it with other things because trenbolone helps you get the most out of everything else. There are guys that did trenbolone only cycles, and that's when like the first reports of like soreness in the nipples and lactating nipples started to come around. And we guys on the forums, came to a consensus at this time, basically that it was impossible for trenbolone to aromatize. So it had to be either progesterone or prolactin activity that was causing it, because trenbolone wouldn't become an estrogen. And yeah, I mean, I think since around 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, I think by then we'd been brewing, we'd had trenbolone now. Trenbolone had been back at least for a good 7 years, 6 years. Guys stopped doing trenbolone only cycles and they started stacking it with other stuff just because we all know. I mean, trenbolone only cycles weren't all that great, but guys using it with other stuff were reporting great results. So, I mean, yeah, like we've all known a lot of guys that get gynecomastia symptoms and shit, even get full-blown gynecomastia and never lactate. But we've also know guys that lactate and never have actual growth in the tissue. And I think the lactating and some of the sensitivities is more due to prolactin. And obviously the growth, I think, is more due to actual estrogen. So, but that's just, but then like a guy like me, I don't really have issues with prolactin or progesterone that much. I mean, I've done trenbolone, done Superdrol quite a bit, never have lactating issues. But if I go above 500-600 milligrams of testosterone, I've got to maybe add aromacin at that point, or even with just a little bit of testosterone, I got to add just a little tiny bit of Novadex. But I've never had issues really with my nipples lactating or really feeling weird from Superdrol or from trenbolone. But I know guys that have. So it's very, I remember a guy used to work at this place I worked at anyway, long story short, he took some pro hormones and he got lactated. He was a real thin guy, really kind of dry chest, dry, built, but kind of dry person, never had issues with gynecomastia, but his nipple lactated. No growth, just secretion coming out. So maybe gynecomastia, full-blown gynecomastia from trenbolone, that could be a total myth. But as far as having issues with symptoms on your nips, I would think that's a fact of trenbolone if you're prone to it. If you're prone to it. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I said what I thought on it for sure. So it's very tricky. Another thing, this is why these types of myths keep going, is they're very tricky because prolactin is one of those blood works that fluctuate so much. Like your prolactin levels fluctuate. Like you can eat something really delicious and it can throw your prolactin levels off. You can have sex and it can throw your prolactin levels off. You can gamble. Your stock could go up, whatever, and it could throw off your prolactin levels. There's all kinds of things, different times of the day. It's just your prolactin levels naturally go up and down. So a lot of guys will run their prolactin levels, but oh my God, our prolactin levels are high. And then they'll run blood work again, like a week later. And, oh, my prolactin levels are back to normal. Like what happened? So that's why it kind of gets that's why this myth kind of gets thrown around a lot. So. All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is another one for you, Rick. It has to do with oral only cycles. So tell us about this myth.
So the myth is that oral only cycles don't really work. Oral only cycles really are a waste of time. Right? Is that the myth, or am I getting the myth backwards, Steve?
Well, the myth is oral only cycles will kill you or do something to you. I don't know. It's not literally kill you.
They're not good. They're not good. They're more dangerous and less effective than injectable cycles. I think one of the reasons that oral cycles can be a bit less effective is if people are not consistent with their dosing. I think injecting really keeps a steady kind of upward swing, peak, downward, but it's not like in a day, like when you take an oral and it's just fluctuating throughout the day. I think having parts of the day where you're not on the oral, your levels have dropped too much, could be one of the issues. I think a lot of guys using a lot of Dianabol as their first cycle, and really not having a good baseline, a good 5 to 8 years of natural training. So they make some gains on the Dianabol, and then when they get off, they just quickly go away. One of the worst things you could do is run a Dianabol cycle if you've been training for less than 3 to 5 years natural, because almost everything you gain, you're going to lose. And in my opinion, you make it harder for yourself to gain muscle naturally afterwards once you've done the steroids so early on. So that is kind of I'm giving the myth some sort of value there. But to be honest, man, you can grow like a weed on some orals if you run them correctly, if you really stay on them a good length of time, if you use them properly, if you've had 5 to 8 years of natural training under your belt. I did an Anavar cycle, 5 weeks, and dropped something like 4 body fat percentage points in just about 5 weeks total. And it was great. I stayed lean. I stayed pretty lean afterwards, even weeks, months after I was done with the Anavar. And I kind of did that just from just an Anavar cycle. I just make sure to take my Anavar spaced throughout the day. Always had some Anavar in my system. Even slept with the pills on the night table and a cup of water next to the bed to get a little wake up call, toss them in, slurp my water down, and then get right back to bed, just to make sure I stayed at a pretty steady level with my oxandrolone use. Go to anavarbook.com, guys. Check out anavarbook.com. Once the book is up for sale, you guys will be able to grab it there, where I'll actually do a whole run through step by step on how to run a proper Anavar cycle. And I had great results with it. And I've had great results with Trenbolone and other orals. I just think it's a myth that you don't get great gains, or that you don't get permanent gains, permanent progress from oral only cycles. It's a complete myth. And I think the myth really stems from these newbies, new guys, new jacks doing some Dianabol only cycles and losing it all. Or maybe some fat dudes that have core lifestyle issues with their eating, doing some Anavar cycle to shred up. And then when they get off the Anavar, they go back to eating like shit. Or maybe they never stopped eating like shit. Maybe they just did a little more cardio, who knows? And so the results aren't that long-lived, I think. And why newbies? Because I think the majority of newbies that are going to just give this a try and then go away and never do this again are probably just going to dabble with orals. They're going to be scared of injections. A lot of dudes are scared of giving themselves a shot. And so when you get a bunch of guys that are scared of giving themselves a shot and they're newbies and they want to enhance, you get a lot of these really early on oral only cycles, Anavar or Dianabol mostly, where the results go away quickly. But I think a lot of the reason why that thought is kind of out there is because of the experience level and the type of guys doing these oral only cycles. Because I think you get a guy like Steve or I to do an oral only cycle, and we're going to get some fucking results that are going to look good and maintained for a long time afterwards. So that's just my opinion.
I think one of the big reasons this is one of these myths that sources came up with. They're like, oh, you can't run oral only cycles. You got to run testosterone with the cycle. You got to run this with the cycle. You got to run that with the cycle. They just want to make more sales. They make more money off testosterone than anything else. So of course they want people to be using testosterone every cycle. It costs them $1 to make a vial of testosterone. They can sell it for $50. That's a huge markup. And then something like human growth hormone, they don't really make any money off selling human growth hormone because the margins are so tight. So, but testosterone, they don't even care. Like if they ship someone 5 vials of testosterone and the post office loses it or something, they got no issue reshipping the testosterone. But if post office loses, the post office loses HGH, a bunch of kits of HGH, they're probably, they'll probably have a little disclaimer on their website. Hey, if this is seized or the post office loses it, we do not reship. Sorry. So take the risk on your own health. So this is a perfect example, though, as one of these myths. Now, are injectables more effective over the long term? That is something that we can debate. And, the short answer is no, because if you run like short little 4-8 week oral only cycles, cycle off, PCT, do the same thing, versus running 12-week injectable cycles and cycling off and PCT and then recovering your HPTA, over time, I don't see your results being different. Now, you can make the argument, are these orals hammering my liver more than injectables? And I would say yes. But again, you run your liver support N2 guard, and then you take time off, and you're going to be able to recover your liver regardless. And injectable steroids also hammer your liver. So let's just be honest about it. So, I think there's a lot of factors, Rick. And this is one that, it's one of these things, the anecdotal evidence shows that it's a myth, because I've known guys for 20 years who have run nothing but oral cycles, and they've done quite well. But look, if you're going to run a lot of steroids, you're a pro bodybuilder at a high level, then yes, I will say you have to run injectables, because you're running so much steroids that it would make no sense to just run orals. But if you're just a gym rat, like 99% of the people listening to this are, you can you do just fine on oral only cycles. All right, guys. So I think this is a good show, Rick, and we will talk to you guys next week for another compound episode. Maybe we will do another myth episode. Maybe we'll keep this series going if you guys like it. Talk to you guys next week. Take care.
Have a good one, Steve. Have a good one, guys.
Guys, this is the required legal disclaimer. We are only sharing our experience from years of steroid use. We are not doctors, and none of what we say should be regarded as medical advice. Always check with your doctor before taking any drugs or starting any training program.